Hi, my name is Rebecca Vinton and I am AFL lead for Westcliff High School for Girls, and I'm just going to talk you through our assessment for learning branch of the teaching and learning aspect of our school. So essentially, there are two types of assessment for learning, and both are used alongside each other. So we've got summative assessment, which is what is used sort of traditionally in schools to make sure that children are making progress. So things like end of unit tests and sort of more formal things that get marked. The formative assessment is something that is used all the time within lessons and as we go through schemes of work throughout the year to make sure that we're reviewing what the students have done, allowing us to make sure that they are making the required progress and that everybody is on track throughout the lesson and, as I said, the scheme of work. So both are used alongside each other, with the traditional end of unit and the more informal regular checking as they are learning. So there are lots of different ways that we can check that they are learning. The most obvious one is questioning. Again, a very traditional way, but if we don't ask questions, then we can't be sure that they know what's going on. It's the easiest way for us to track progress. There's also self-assessment and peer assessment, which they do a lot at Westcliff to make sure that they are engaging with the criteria that teachers use to allow them to access an understanding that will help them to progress more quickly. We've got dedicated improvement and reflection time, which I'll talk about in just a moment, and also plenaries that are embedded into the lesson plans so that we have allocated time to review and to check progress as we go through. And as I've said, the summative assessments, which happen at the end of the units. So one of the ways that we make sure that we can track the learning is actually we stagger the learning throughout the lesson by having objectives that we wish the students to reach. So they start off quite simply and then they become more difficult as the lesson progresses, and we check that the progress is being made. So here we've got a variety of questions that are varying in difficulty, and if we have a look here, you can see that they start from very basic knowledge questions such as recall, contenders for the throne in 1066, and then they get slightly more difficult as they go down, where we start to evaluate and analyse and then use what we understand to create. So it depends on the subject, but essentially teachers will plan to build the difficulty level throughout the lesson and check that the students are making progress with those requirements. We use Bloom's taxonomy to set those objectives. So at the bottom, we've got 3 objectives for a history lesson, and I've highlighted in a different colour the key words that show the level of difficulty increasing. So we've got students being able to identify, then to explain, and then to reach a supported judgment, which really shows the evaluation skill, and we can assess that's taking place as we've built that into the lesson. Self and peer assessment is routine. The children become very used to it very quickly. We have different coloured pens to identify which type of assessment is taking place. We've also got dedicated improvement and reflection time, where we look at areas of strength and also areas for improvement. Now, this can look different across the different key stages. At key stage 5, for example, it will be much more set based around mark schemes and the exam criteria, whereas with key stage 3, it might be something they're a bit more used to at primary school, such as 2 stars and a wish. We are very particular with the type of self and peer assessment that we get the students to do. We train them to make sure that it is constructive and that it is useful, as opposed to it being vague and generic. So self-assessment and dedicated improvement time can overlap sometimes, because if you're being reflective about your performance on a summative piece of work, then you're also self-assessing at the same time as that. So these are just some examples now of sort of good and not so good peer assessment. The first one just says, you know, great. The second one is much more detailed in terms of what they can specifically do to improve for next time. And we like to make it something achievable, small and achievable, so that progress is being made the entire time. So key stage 3, 4 and 5 then, like I said, we've got different ways of assessing for learning. Key stage 3 being a little bit more I said a bit more primary school, but it develops as they go through, all the way through to modelling, what the teacher's marking, waggles and wabbles I'll get onto in just a moment, but using the criteria for the different AOs at A level, and also try and design mark schemes potentially, which shows that they can access and understand the requirements of their course. So a waggle or a wabble is what a good one looks like or what a bad one looks like. And if I was asking you to judge which cake was best, you may say that the one on the left is best and the one on the right needs a little bit of improvement. But if I was to say that the success criteria was based just on the flavour and the taste of that cake, then actually that changes things. So we use this as an example to the children to say that it really depends on what your success criteria is in terms of how you then judge something. So the success criteria can be simple, it can be exam board specifications, it can be tailored for each key stage, but essentially it's to give them access to the skills and to understand the skills that they will need, and we can assess whether they are grasping that or not with assessment for learning. So the red box is something that we usually use within lessons for this formative assessment. However, with COVID, obviously this is slightly restricted at the moment. It is organically embedded in the lessons. The students become very quick at understanding what we do. The point at the top with the 1 to 10 on fingers, no hands up questioning, using thumbs up and down, maybe. These are things that we can regularly use within an activity very quickly to check that all students are answering a question. That allows us to then ask any of them to justify an answer or to give me more information, and therefore we can check the learning that's going on in that class and make sure that everybody is on track. So these are some of the things that we would usually use in the red box and we hope to use soon. However, all students do have their own mini whiteboard and pen, which is personally theirs that they can use in lessons. The example here is maths, but it's very easy to use in any lesson for a quick answer. And we can see all students giving answers and then address whether there are any misconceptions or problems within the room. We can get everybody in the right place before moving on, before people feel like they're being left behind. So a stand-up, sit-down approach is something that we can do in a COVID environment, which is you put a statement on the board and then you ask them to decide whether they agree with it or not, and then stand up or sit down to reflect that decision. This is good for teachers because essentially it means that we can choose who to question. They can challenge each other, and again, we can really dig a little bit deeper to make sure that their understanding of a concept is right because of the decision that they have made. Discussion is also vital. Usually we can use things like a ball of wool perhaps or talking chips to limit or encourage discussion, but at the moment all these things are limited. However, discussion will still be taking place within the classroom obviously, and ensuring that everybody contributes is a really important way for us to assess learning, so teachers will monitor that as they go through. The other thing that we like to do is allow the children to raise questions in order for them to take the lesson in a direction that suits them and their learning. It means that they're more engaged and they're far more likely to take part in discussions. Now, while the teacher will still be thinking of the objectives that they want to achieve by the end of that lesson, they will let the children take it sometimes on a route that they might not have planned for. This doesn't always happen, but it can be good for subjects such as religious studies or even history, where we can use a stimulus to really engage the children and we can assess their learning by the way that they're engaging within that lesson. So that is a whistle-stop tour of assessment for learning. If you've got any more questions, feel free to get in touch with the Teaching and Learning team, but I hope that has been insightful for you.